Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video we'll be doing a deep dive on the new Asgardian rework and base stat increases. I glossed over this a little bit in my blog post reading, but I've had some time to actually sit down and, work out the math in terms of the new stats and how they're going to shape up compared to existing characters, and I have to say that it actually is impressive despite my first reading on it. Now, unfortunately, I do wish that the kits went a bit further, but we're going to talk about this and how crazy the new stats actually will be, and what my recommendations are if you're wanting to maybe prep some of them early before the next patch. So if you're ready to go, then let's boil it down. Okay, so we're going to bring ourselves back to the blog post from Friday, and we're just going to take a very quick look at the kits, the changes to the kits, and what I kind of went over it a little bit on Friday, but I just want to go over it again. And so one thing that I want to say, and I don't know if this is a typo or not here, the health plus 8% for Heimdall is not that great. Compared to basically every other stat increase on every other character, this seems a bit strange. And so I don't know if this is a typo for, say, like 38 or 28 or 18 or something else, and they forgot a number. Wouldn't be surprising. But if it's just 8%, it doesn't make an overall huge difference. We'll also talk about Heimdall specifically because there's some issues with him more broadly. His special, they added this clear 2 negative effects from self. Now, when the AI is in control, which it's going to be, so by the way, for those who don't remember, it is going to be a war defense team again, so Asgardians 2.0, essentially. And this is typically, unless things change, this is his second turn. That's typically when you want to clear anyways, but I just don't know if Heimdall's going to survive very long, just because he's not someone that people really want to spend much time in gearing, because he's very expensive, and we're going to take a look at that in a little bit too. So that's added there. Ultimate's not changed, basic's not changed. His basic's pretty crap, actually. His passive has added quite a bit. So in War on turn, generate 2 ability energy for 2 random hero Asgardians or self. Kind of random there, right? So it's not always going to be the characters that you probably want it to be. On heal block, fill speed bar by 20%. That's okay, I guess. Asgardian allies gain 100% accuracy, and that's regardless of, some of the other stuff, so that's good. So you can't blind them. I mean, you can't really blind them anyway, so I guess this is, in the off chance that they do get blinded. I don't know why that was even a thing now that I look at it. 25% crit chance. Now, this is going to be really good for Thor. Now, probably the new characters as well. But he's kind of just there. There's no real imperative to kind of, gear him up. And we're going to look at why that's not a good idea anyways. But, all this stuff is, passive related, so he just kind of needs to be on the team. When this character or hero Asgardian drops below 50%, apply 2 death proof and speed up for 2 turns. That's okay, so if he survives a little bit longer, then that's going to activate, I guess, but he's probably going to be very easy to drop. Sif's stat increases were actually pretty good. The focus is largely pointless, because she doesn't have any debuffs. The only thing I can think of is if you're running a Skirmisher ISO class, that it would impact your ability to clear. I guess otherwise it's not really necessary. The special changes defense up to self and all the Asgardians for 2 turns. Sorry, 1 turn. It should have been 2 turns, actually. And that's my biggest issue, is I don't know how effective this is going to be. 1 turn of defense up and 1 turn of taunt. I think it's a somewhat lower cooldown, but overall, I don't know. I feel it could have gone a bit further. Her passive has changed a bit. It's added more resistance to the team. And on spawn, she gains immunity, but the 1 turn, I just don't know how impactful that's going to be either. And it's going to depend on the turn order, right? Because if she goes before other characters, then it's going to drop. When hero Asgardians drop below 50%, she gains taunt, so that's good. And actually, we're going to see that these health increases here, the 38%, is quite impactful. It actually means a lot. So if you're sitting around with a 6 or 7 red Sif, now might be the time for her. She's also a skill character, so that's quite nice there. Thor, though, I labeled this in my video God King Thor on the thumbnail, because this is exactly why. It's huge. It is absolutely ridiculous. We're going to look at this in the spreadsheets, and it's absolutely bonkers. Basic is kind of neat. It's an extra little thing here. But overall, he didn't really get a lot of changes. I don't think he really needed it necessarily. You know, we still have his passive, right? And a lot of people forget about the passive with the charges, and he slams on the ground and does a lot of damage. That's kind of what I expect to happen. And obviously, we don't know any of the two other new characters and what they're going to contribute to the team. Now, you know, as far as passives go and otherwise and buffs and whatnot. And one thing that I want to point out before we get to the tables is Hela. So what did Hela, by not having her now, what did she give to the team? And so for the, you know, other than the moves, but passive-wise, obviously there's the Undead Asgardian turn bar stuff and the summons. On turn, heal self for 5%. Sorry, that's not important. The max war defense, the damage. This was kind of important. So 25% damage to Asgardian's allies on war defense. Now, what I'm kind of expecting is that one of the new characters will probably replace this. I expect that one of the new characters will either have a damage passive or a health passive or both, because there's, you know, most of the new teams have like anywhere from 30 to 40%. It depends on if there's a legendary, you know, extra health and other stats to the team. So I definitely expect some of that. It also makes me wonder if you're going to be able to use Hela in the meantime, like until the full team is there. Can you just use Hela with the 3 others, with maybe one more, you know, until we get the full 5? It'll be interesting to see how that really works out there. The other thing that I want to point out is Thor's passive. So a lot of people forget about this, but he actually gains 15% damage to himself. He also gains 10% damage for each Asgardian or Wave 1 Avenger ally. So I doubt you're going to be wanting to use him with the Wave 1 Avengers, you know, after this patch, but it's there, right? And so he's going to be getting a whopping 15% plus 40% for a full team. That's a lot. When we take a look at the stats, it's absolutely crazy. And lastly, I want to talk about Heimdall as far as his gearing. So he is super effing expensive. And so I don't think that you're going to want to take him very high. Some people might just take him to gear 12 and leave him there, because he not only is he Mystic, right? We're crawling on the floor when it comes to Mystic gear, but oh boy, you know, like he just requires so many minis. It's just I can't fathom, you know, like anyone gearing him up to 14 or 15, even if you have a 6 or 7 red star. I don't even think it's a great idea. However, let's jump to the stats, because this is probably what you guys came here to see. And we're going to talk about Heimdall first, then Sif, then Thor, because he is the last and we have more to talk about there. And the way that I've done this in the past with other characters. If you've watched my channel, you may have seen this. So we're comparing level 85, 7 yellow, 5 red, blue ISO 2. Now this is typically like a raider thing, so not striker, because you get additional damage stat off of that. And gear tier 15, Stark Tech 25%. So the way that you find the stats for this is you basically have to just take away everything. You have 7 yellow in MSF.gg. It will include Stark Tech though, and that's about all you get. It also includes the passives as well, and that gives you the base stats. And from there you have to calculate the additionals to what I have the new column stat here, and then that's when you start adding on all of the other stuff, the red stars, the ISOs, and all the stats. And so at the end of it all, you get these, which is the stats for Heimdall now. So about 600,000 hit points. This is with the 8% improvement. And actually, surprisingly, it's not as bad as I thought, but it's Heimdall. So he is actually in the top 30. This is shocking. And he's equivalent to like Icarus in health, believe it or not. But obviously, just because they have the stats doesn't mean that they have the kits to back it up, okay? So a top 30 in the health pool, top 10 in the damage stat category, equivalent to death pool. This is shocking because he got that 38% damage increase. He's equivalent to Omega Red in armor. In fact, actually, a lot of them are equivalent to Omega Red now with the armor increases, so that puts him in the top 12. He's equivalent to Emma Frost in Focus, which gives him a top 15. He also gets, of course, that's including the additional 30% focus that he gets to himself as part of his own passive. And resistance-wise, it's nothing really great there. You know, it's top 85, equivalent to Red Skull. So there's a few of them that have, I believe Thor is in that category as well. He is also speed 100, which is not very good. But of course, there's that part of his passive as well that improves speed bar if he gets heal block, things like that. And he gets 25% crit to hit to himself and to the team, so that's new. Now, his stats are green. This is green. This is all good stuff, but it's Heimdall. His kit's not great, and he's super expensive to gear, so I just don't think that there's gonna, unless you've already pre-done this in the past, I just don't think people are gonna, don't do this. I don't think it's a good idea, personally. But Sif, let's talk about Sif, because she is a skill character, so this one's a little bit more interesting. She got quite an improvement in the damage category here, sorry, in the health category, but also in the damage as well. So she's a top 10 health character, equivalent to Cap Sam, which is pretty interesting, because Cap Sam is a pretty powerful tank. And while the kit's not going to be as good as Cap Sam, the stats are pretty compelling. So a top 10 in the health category, that puts it equivalent to that. Top 25 in damage, equivalent to Silver Surfer, which is interesting. But again, you're kind of relying on her ult, which I guess rebounds a bit there. And I don't know how impactful that's going to be. So despite the good stats, it's still, the kit hasn't been improved that much. Armor, again, similar to Heimdall here with Omega Red. I guess they all can't be top 12, but, you know, you get the point. Her focus, while it doesn't matter, is in the top 50, and her resistance is in the top 30, similar to Rescue, who actually has a lot of resistance. You guys might notice this in Doom Raid. So, all in all, and that includes her new resistance passive as well. And all in all, she does what she needs to do. You know, her health stats are pretty high, and so if there's any additional health that's coming, you know, with any other characters. Let's, for example, we can actually do this. And let's say that she gets some characters have like a 30% health passive. There's no legendary on this team, so I'm not going to assume that. But let's take this, and let's say there's a 30% health passive from someone else. And then we can see how much it's boosted. So that alone would give her almost close to 1,000,000 hit points if somebody else on the team has a 30% health passive. You know, and so that's quite impactful. You know, that's without war buffs, without the rune buffs and all of that. So Sif's health overall is quite respectable, and I think that's really nice. And so she might be worth gearing, maybe up to at least gear tier 14. I don't know if you want to take her all the way. She is skill gear, so you'll have more time to do that. Now, Thor, on the other hand, this is where we really need to get to. He's very impressive. He saw huge numbers on his rework. So here we go. 900,000 on his hit points without any additional passes or anything like that, equivalent to Dr. Doom, which is a top 5 health stat in the game. So very impressive for a blaster character. His damage stat is above the #1 position. So currently #1 is tied with T'Challa and Phyla-Vell, and they both have damage passives on their self. So this does include the 15% damage that he gets for himself, but it does not include the 10% per Asgardian ally or Wave 1 or whatever. So adding on like 40% more with a full team is very significant. He's like cracked the top and will become, unless one of the other characters are higher, will become the new #1 damage character stat. Damage stat character. And obviously his kit hasn't changed that much, and maybe that's why. Because his damage stat is so high now that it didn't need to be changed, because it would be way too overpowered had they actually altered the kit, you know, with more damage or whatever in mind. And I have to say that, again, remind people that he has that passive where he slams down on the ground, you know, when he gets the 5 charges, and that's going to hit even harder than it did before. So back in the day, this was very crippling, especially if you had like a 6 or 7 red Thor. And so this is huge. Armor, he is finally God King Thor. So a top 12 armor stat for a blaster character is quite good. And so this is great for him. Where he does slide a little bit, despite the bumps, is his focus. So that's relevant to landing his ult on the stuns. It's top 50. It's not terrible, but it's not like in the top category. So he might still fail to land these things, perhaps, but he is also getting some 30% from Heimdall, so that might help as well. So this is not including the 30% focus that you're getting from Heimdall. So that being said, with that included, he's probably sitting in the top 25 somewhere, but I just wanted to mention that. Anyways, he's probably going to be used in the team, so it should be okay, as long as you're using Heimdall. Now, resistance is the same as the others, it's similar to Red Skull, nothing too great there. Same as Heimdall, actually. One thing I do want to kind of let people know again, though, is that he's slow. He has a 90 speed, and he does get speed bar, 5% speed bar for when an enemy attacks an Asgardian ally, so that's something. But he is the definition of a cannon, a slow cannon. He's not a glass cannon, because his hit points now is really high, but a cannon nonetheless. So how many turns he's going to take, I don't know, but when he does take a turn, or when his passive goes off, it's going to hurt. it is going to do a lot of damage. So Thor is a character who doesn't actually take all that much gear, not nearly as much as Heimdall, and it is a bit of a problem, right? So Mystic Gear, we know, is a bit of a problem. I'm sitting with a 6 red Thor. I'm actually thinking about possibly doing this. I'm kind of struggling a little bit after Darkhold. I think a lot of us are. You know, my position for my orange gear. I know this doesn't look that bad, but it actually is, because you need like 500 for a character, typically 400 to 500 of these arcane powders for a character. So I'm not really in a good position to be able to upgrade any more than like one character for Mystic, and so Heimdall is definitely not going to make the cut for that. I might give him some gold for leveling, but I'm not going to like put gear into him. Thor will probably get some gear and some gold. Sif will probably get gear tier 14 and some more gold, but other than that, I don't do Heimdall. Even if you're sitting on a 7 red, I'm not sure I can justify that. But for anyone who does have a high red stars overall, this might be something exciting for you. And I want to end off by saying that I think that very much this could be the Scourge 3 team. I think that this could be the Young Avengers and Web Warriors equivalent, because we're going to have, you know, whether or not they use Hero Asgardians specifically, or if they use Asgardians, that would give us 7 characters, actually, if they use the Asgardian tag, or 5, of course, if they're going to use the Hero Asgardian tag. But I think very much that this could be the next Scourge team. It's a war defense team. We know that they've used war teams in the past because of perhaps people spending less money on them. So I would prepare for that as well, and that's something that we'll have to think about in the near future. So hopefully that some of this was helpful. If it did, please click that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And of course, until next time, guys, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.